Okay, guys, welcome to Webisode Watch episode 13. Thank you for joining us. Today we have the cast and crew from LARPs, the series, Geek and Sundry's new scripted digital show. So let's introduce them, and I'll start with Charlotte.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Rogers. I play Brittany. Also in character, I play Corellia on LARPs, the series.
Oh. It's on Julian, but I will talk. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Neal, and I play Shane on LARPs the series, and I'm also associate producer.
And I'm Scott Humphrey. I play Will in the series, and his character, Biff.
And I am Julian Stambouli, and I am the director and co-creator of LARPs the series.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Just a word out there for anyone who wants to submit questions. There's a few different ways. If you're watching us via the Google Hangout, get that Q&A app open, submit your question, and I'll make sure to ask them. Or you can use Twitter a couple of different ways. You can start by sending a message to @Webisode_Watch, or even better, add the hashtag LARPsWatch, LARPSWATCH. Okay, so my first question, let me just dive right in here. Can you explain to us what LARPs, the series, why it's so important for you guys to portray role players from the perspective of role players?
Sure. Well, I guess first off, LARPs the series is a show that explores a group of LARPers, 5 LARPers, but it sets LARPing as kind of the backdrop. That's not the main focus of the show. Just like all the great shows that we see on TV, the show is about people. LARPing is just a hobby that they happen to pursue, and it's through that we like to play on the different conflicts that can arise from having an imaginary world and a reality, and the conflict of trying to keep those two separate. That being said, LARPing is, at least as I know, is probably one of the most, unfortunately, oft-ridiculed hobbies that there is, especially within geek culture. It seems to be an easy target for people to pick on, and it's really unfortunate because, while we did not necessarily set out to find a subculture and portray it correctly, it was almost natural for us to. We wouldn't see why we would want to ridicule a group of gamers, that we love. I mean, it's Montreal. We're from Montreal. Montreal's got a huge LARPing community. And then every Sunday up on the mountain, you can go watch them fight while other people are playing drums in the corner. Not the corner. There's no corners in the park. But I mean, it's a nice little community. So I guess it was for us. It was so natural to just want to portray the subculture properly because we wanted to use that as a vehicle. And so when I created the story, actually it was probably about 8 years ago now. I never got around to writing it because I didn't think I could do it justice, because I have never LARPed before. That's when I met up with John Verrill, who's the writer of the series, and he is a LARPer and been LARPing for a very long time. He's run games. He's very, very proficient in that whole world. And he was able to get the sense of humor of the show, what I wanted to do with the characters, but in a naturally respectful way. And I think that was a great move. Good move, Julian.
There you go. Do you guys role play yourselves?
No, personally.
I
don't personally. And even before the project, I had never experienced doing any type of LARPing or role-playing activity. And I think sorry, my cat made a sound. And I think that goes for most of us. I think for Liz and Scott maybe had a little more experience, but they can tell you, I think, themselves.
Yeah, well, me, I had never done a LARPing before. I had done some tabletop role playing, like in the Exalted series, some White Wolf stuff, and we do have a weekly D&D game that we take part in. But what was really important for John especially was that we all get on the same page just before shooting season 1. So we actually did a one-shot LARP in a park for an afternoon. He gave us a framework for a story, and we all had our characters, and we were on like a space station, and there was a mole on board, and we had to ferret out who it was. So that gave us the opportunity to experience what LARPing was like. And also, so many of us are actors, so we have that experience with improv anyway. So it was just a really fun time.
I thought you said that there was a mole on board and that you had to ferret it out. So
I did. I did say that. I
ferret.
thought. Yeah, I was hoping to get that, Julian. Thank you.
Anyway.
Inside joke, I take it. Okay.
Not at all. Just me being an idiot. All right.
So you guys have a strong, or most of you have a strong background in role-playing, that maybe not LARPing specifically, but Dungeons & Dragons you mentioned. So awesome. So how did you Avengers assemble?
Ah, the old Avenger assemble. I don't know if Julian maybe wants to tack onto this, but the majority of the team, we actually knew each other quite well through university, through Concordia University. The core cast were all sort of went through the theater program together, and then JT, Jonathan Silver, one of our cast members, was very good friends with our producer Ben and Julian. So it was kind of, I'm trying to imagine this visually, but anyway, the point is we all knew each other. And so when this sort of concept was coming to be and while the writing was taking place, Julian and well, John and Ben and the team invited us to audition, amongst others as well. And that was a really fun process. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think Benjamin and I, we have a company called Bean Duck Productions, and we financed and produced the season through the small production company. And then next on board was John to actually write the script and help us with the story. After that, we held auditions, but as Scott said, they all went to school together, so they had such a great chemistry already that it would have been silly to break that up. So I think that's really it comes out on screen, and it clearly does, because I mean, just today, don't mean to brag, but we actually won a nice accolade, a nice award on Snobby Robot online for best cast, best ensemble, and I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of that. They're a great group of actors, those kids.
Aww.
Hey, you're a part of it too, mister. You're in an episode.
Yes, I am.
That's a very common theme across most web series, is that the people tend to know each other and have great chemistry. It really seems to be the winning formula of the Guild. Great example. I mean, they all came from the same improv troupe, so that's great. You guys have mentioned a couple times you're from Montreal, Concordia University, because I'm also Canadian. I know where that is. So how is the digital content scene in the Montreal, and let's just throw Ottawa in there because, well, they're Ottawa. How's the scene out that way?
Well, I just want to start it off anyway, and then maybe, I don't know if other people want to jump in. Montreal is a large city, but it doesn't have the size of somewhere like Toronto, New York, LA, etc. So while there is work that either comes to town or is from town, the way that the industry works in Montreal is actually quite different from what one might picture as sort of a normal industry, quote unquote, in the sense that there isn't as much film and television work, but there is more work in video games. A ton of work, right? Because we've got Ubisoft is here, Eidos is here, Warner Brothers now has a studio here, etc. So there's kind of that work going on. And in terms of digital content, again, because it's not a huge scene, we don't have these large companies producing large work, but we've got a lot of people who are very passionate and very talented making their own work, like us.
Yeah, and another thing that's really great about the Montreal community is because it's quite small. It's also very tight knit. So people who are making their own projects, like there are a couple of web series that Scott and I have been on, or like short films that Charlotte, Scott, and I have taken part in. That they're friends projects, but everybody helps each other out, which is a really nice atmosphere and a city to live in. So I think we were all really interested in not you know, not being necessarily part of the group of people who moved to Toronto, even though that's a perfectly valid career option, but like trying to create our own work here that promotes Montreal and see where that would take us.
Yeah, well, it's better than valid. It's pretty good. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. I'm sorry.
I live in Toronto and I see all the work around here, but yeah, it needs to be more centers. That's just the reality of it. More centers equals more content, and everybody wins in that scenario. So
exactly.
Yeah. That being said, there's lots of French content here. I think the biggest problem is just that because a lot of people leave for Toronto, Vancouver, or even LA and New York, is that there's not a lot of English creators here as well, and so it kind of just circles.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping to be part of the solution to that. That's one of our goals, is to keep people here. Sorry, Toronto.
Perfect. No, I'd love to hear more about this, because I mean it's funny how the Toronto scene is very specific. It's very comedian based. And we were talking, Elizabeth and I, on Twitter. I went to the Space Generators thing, and I was talking with a few of them, and it's just there's too many comedians in Toronto, and there's not enough work. So everywhere's got its challenges. So
yeah,
of course, yeah.
Moving on. So how did the LARPs, the series, come about, and speak on the creative process?
Sure. Well, I guess they always say that one of your first piece of work should always be inspired by what you know and within kind of your own stories. And this is really my directorial debut, which I'm very excited and happy about. Thank you. I guess it started. It was based originally on a relationship that I was in probably about 8 years ago, and kind of as it was nearing its end, I kind of saw this duality within the relationship, how we were in the public sphere and how we were in the private sphere, and at the same time, I had first heard about LARPing, actually, I think probably through John Verrill, because it was around that time I had met him as well, and I kind of saw that as a perfect, symbol, as a perfect parallel. So two of the characters are based on that part of my past, and actually the other two characters, or two of the other characters, are based on my brothers. So it's basically me and my brothers and one of my past relationships in there. That's the inspiration for those characters. And then there was a fifth character who, was the brainchild of John Verrill, and obviously fantastic addition. And as you'll soon see. And like I said, from there, it's like it was 8 years of me procrastinating with an idea and John yelling at me to actually create the thing. And eventually I was like, you know what, you're going to be a lot better at this than I am. So I just laid it on him. Was there a second part of the question, or did I actually...
No, you actually answered two questions in one. It worked out perfectly.
Amazing.
I'm all about efficiency. My sets are efficient.
So we're going to move on to our first viewer question, who comes from Simon Fox, who's a web creator like yourself. What was the most difficult aspect of filming, and how did you resolve it?
I just want to respond, because I mean, I'm sure everyone would have a different response to this, actually, but for me it was that we ended up filming what turned into 63 minutes of content. And we shot it in 12 days, 12 consecutive days, which means that we were shooting 14-hour days, 15-hour days, somewhere in there, consecutively. I had one day mostly off, I remember, but I don't think many people had that luxury. So the sheer kind of intensity of the process and having to make sire that we didn't drop the ball ever, because we didn't have time to drop the ball. I remember we did one day, we shot a whole episode, because it wasn't a one shot, but it was all in the same location, and then we all got in cars and we drove up north, because starting the next morning at 5 a.m. we had to shoot a bunch of things in the woods. Yeah, so for me, anyway, the sheer pressure of don't screw this up, it was probably the most difficult thing. And how did we overcome it? We got lucky, and we're all very cool people. So that's that.
You know what? That being said, Mr. Fox, is we actually were incredibly lucky that nothing went wrong that could have been immediately fixed. There was not rain on a single day that we were shooting outdoors. When we were missing a piece from a light, this place called Cinepool that rented us the lights actually delivered the missing piece to our set. Nothing went wrong that was not immediately fixed. And we are not at all expecting that for the next season. I know that's a one-shot deal. Never happening again.
I guess I'll throw in there just to add on to Scott's. One of the things that was hard for me was, like he said, we shot in 12 days. So near the end, I think it was the last 2 days, everyone was feeling sick. I had an awful migraine. And it was just learning to put those things aside to shoot and to put the product out there and make it as good as we could. And so we just had to overcome it. There wasn't a way. We just pushed through it, and that was interesting. It wasn't as lovely as it could have been, but we did it, and I think it was a huge learning experience for most of us. I think for all of us, this is the longest period of time that we've been able to be on screen. So for me, it was really a huge mind exercise as to, what are we shooting? What scenes are we shooting? Where do they fall in the script? And it was the first time I really had to follow a script like that when it was shot out of sequence, because a lot of us come from theater where it's just continual. So it was really just a big first learning experience for all of us, and I think we overcame it pretty great. We just pushed through best we could.
That's amazing to hear. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't understand is when you're shooting and you're on such a tight schedule, there is no sick days. You just gotta push through, and that's awesome that you guys were able to do that.
But you know what, Blair? To actually just tack onto that, they were sick for the last 2 or 3 days, the entire cast, and not a single crew member knew. I only found out afterwards, and when I asked why you guys never told me, it's because they said it's not your problem. And I think that's what any crew member could dream for. Like, that was awesome.
Everybody watching, bunch of troopers here, a lot of team players. Now, I do have another viewer question from one of my favorite YouTubers. Unfortunately, it's requesting information about plot for season 2. So
I can see that, so I can answer it without giving any spoilers away.
By all means. The question is from Momo O'Brien.
Momo!
Hi, Momo. So the part of your question that I will read is, what are your plans for season 2? So basically, season 2 is in pre-production right now. We have a draft of the script done. We have cast some new people. We're going to do longer episodes. We did a first read of the script last week, and it sounds really, really great. So we've got a whole lot of exciting things coming up, and we're hoping to be shooting that quite soon. So really, following us on social media is the best way to stay up to date on that, because it's happening. It's coming. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for taking that. I appreciate that. Okay. Julian, you mentioned earlier that the funding was done through your own, was it production company?
Yeah.
Why was web chosen as the medium for LARPs, the series?
Web was chosen for several reasons. One, there's no middleman. We could put up what we wanted, and it was just the easiest platform to hopefully eventually get seen. But that being said, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they put stuff on web is they think because it's a free platform they don't have to focus so much on quality. But I mean, I guess in my opinion, that's exactly why you need to really focus on every aspect of your production, because everyone potentially can see it. And if you need to stand out, you got to put in as much effort as you can. The second thing was that I guess at first glance, our obvious demographic is pretty tech savvy and pretty online savvy, and so which is not an expression, online savvy. But we could reach as many people as we could, and that's why we chose web. It's really hard to break into any other kind of medium within Montreal, so I think that was just an obvious step for us right from the beginning.
Perfect. Awesome. Now let's get into Geek and Sundry. How did this wonderful relationship come about?
Okay, well, when we first released season 1, which came out a bit earlier in 2014, we were just doing a whole lot of press outreach, trying to get as many reviews as we could, and we were really lucky that some of the reviews and write-ups that we got likened us to Felicia Day's show, The Guild. So basically, through that, she discovered us, and we got an email one day that was basically just reaching out to us on from Geek and Sundry, saying we want to talk, we want to start a relationship with you guys. And so we said, oh, I don't know. No, we said hell's yes. And so we've been in contact with them ever since, and we got to meet some of them at Gen Con, and they're a really great group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the perfect fit for LARPs. Their channel is just great for us and the demographic that we're hoping to reach. And just we released the trailer on Friday, and it is, in thinking of all the episodes from our original season 1 release, it's our highest viewed episode today. So, and it's been out for like 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really helping us out.
Well, that and of course Charlotte and Will Wheaton have tea together bi-weekly kind of thing.
Yeah, they're best friends.
Of course. But the also
I wish.
No?
Oh my god. Let's put it in the works, shall we?
Yes.
Well, he just was up here for the last week, but no, I actually remember following you on Twitter, Elizabeth, and I think it must have been when you got the email, because you're like, something just cool happened, but I can't talk about it.
That sounds like me.
Yeah. I don't know what that's all about. But no, they're definitely a behemoth and have done great things for the web community, and I'm a big member of them, and I can say nothing but positive as well. Moving on. Now, something I have found with web series is there's a very hard divide between this. Some web series are very encouraging of their actors using their improv backgrounds to kind of punch up the scripts as they're filming, and others are like, no, we got X amount of time, stick to the script. What was LARPs the series? More improv or more sticking to the script?
Sticking to the script.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty much for everyone. Maybe like a couple lines here and there, but I know for myself, I don't think I took any real opportunities to improv a lot, but I don't know about I guess I should know if other people were off script or not. But I think there was just a few things here and there that we tried, but it was really because of the time constraint. I think we stuck to it pretty closely.
Well, and I think it's just a big. I mean, just to pay a compliment to John, our writer, as well. Like, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but like when I received the script for season 1, I read it and I went, "Oh, great! I don't want to change any of this. This is perfect the way it is." You know. I mean, that said, once we got into shooting, things happen in the moment. You know, something comes out of your mouth that maybe isn't quite what you wanted to say or isn't quite what you meant to say, but it happened anyway. Or you get on set and you realize, oh, there's a bit of a logical gap here, which we didn't think about earlier. So I remember the cast, we rewrote a section of episode 5 just before shooting it. At any rate, yeah. So but that wasn't really improv. That was just a restructuring of the material that we already had. No,
but there was such an open dialogue going on with John. So there were some parts where it felt like our words, because we had been in such close talks with him about, like, what do you think that your character would do here? Like, he really took our opinions into consideration, which was great. One member of the cast, I would say, did do a solid amount of improvising, and that's Jonathan Silver, who plays Arthur. There was just a lot of sometimes he would get ideas and he would go with it, and it was hysterical, and I just feel bad for the people who had to not crack up well on camera with him, or actually not. I think there was once, Julian, you were telling me that the camera was like shaking because you guys were laughing. I don't know if that was because of John.
Basically, it's like we want to make sure that we get the shot that we had planned, but then after that, especially on a low budget, production like this, when you want everyone to feel passionate and connected to the project, you want them to be able to express themselves as artists. So when an actor comes up with an idea or wants to kind of flex that improv muscle, it'd be silly not to let them do it, because more often than not, they're hilarious and they end up being used here and there. So as long as we get the shot that we had planned, I loved improvising on set.
Excellent. I honestly think if you can allow improv, a lot of good comes from it, but obviously tight shooting schedules, it makes it difficult. So I'm glad to hear that some of it got in and whatnot. All right, so I'm going to throw this one towards Charlotte and Scott. You guys both have strong theater backgrounds. What do you find the main difference between shooting on a stage and shooting something scripted like a web series?
Whew. Well, I think it's similar to my previous answer about what we overcame, and that was learning to make your journey continuous, even though you're shooting it out of order. And I know there was times at the end of our shooting schedule when I was like, "Oh, that happened before this? Oh, I wish I realized that before." And it was just figuring your story out and figuring out where you are in those scenes, because when you're on stage, I mean, you're learning it and you're performing it in one shot. So that was the challenge for me, and still is, actually. I think it's going to be a really interesting experience again for season 2, is to really bunker down and figure that out even more and to dive deep into that journey for my character, for me anyway.
Well, and just to add on to Charlotte here, I mean, this comes up a lot, I think, with young actors and people who are coming to the stage for the first time or coming to the screen, the camera for the first time. There's a sense that when I was first learning to act, I went through an arts high school and then I went through Concordia's theater program and so on. When I was first learning to act, there's a sense that if I'm being a different person, because I'm on the stage, this person is much bigger than myself. You know what I mean? They have to speak bigger. They have to be a larger person. They have to project themselves and their emotional life further. Whereas when you come to the screen and when you're doing something like LARPs the series, how can I get that emotional life but present it at the same scale that I present everything in my day-to-day life? How can I be somebody else, or how can I play in someone else's world while not overdoing it? And of course, one of the fun things about this series, not for me, but for everyone else in the series, is that there's also 2 layers to that, right? Or multiple layers if you're John Verrill, who plays Evan, and a ton of NPCs. How can I play me, Will, and then how can I play Biff in the game, or how does Will portray Biff in the game? That's a poor example because, of course, Will doesn't. But I think, for the other performers anyway, that's kind of an interesting journey as well. And then how do you keep that scale appropriate for the medium in which you're working?
Perfect. That actually rolls perfectly into my next question. But before I get to it, just a reminder, we're about halfway done, guys. If you want to send a question, you can use the Q&A app on the Google Hangout. Submit your question. You can use Twitter by sending a message to @Webisode or even better, if you can use the hashtag LARPsWatch. Anything you guys send in, as long as it's appropriate, we'll read it on air. So let's disclaimer, because once I had one that wasn't. So rolling back in and getting this thing going. So you guys each play characters who are playing characters. It's very meta. How difficult is it for you to more or less be playing 2 different characters at any given time?
Charlotte, I think.
Yeah, I guess it was difficult because Brittany's journey was logging when the 2 started to merge into 1. So sometimes I did honestly get confused as to where Brittany's mind was when she was Corellia, and then when Corellia was coming into her life. It got confusing, but but I think you just figure out what characteristics are strong in the two characters that you've chosen, and I tried to stick to them and think about them before we shot and where we were, and I don't even know if I've answered your question because I can't remember what it was.
No, 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 that's fine. In fact, I find with most of these things, without talking any plot, there's a bleed usually. You know, some of the traits of the LARP character starts to bleed into the player, and that is, I mean, I like that aspect of people who do LARPing web series, is that tends to generally occur. So maybe that makes it easier on the actor. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah. But it's interesting for her too, because Corellia was this opposite of who she felt she was in real life. So I'm curious, and I've had discussions with John about how often that happens in real life when he's doing LARPing, is how many people are just completely different from who they come off in reality, and how much of a getaway it is for them to just become someone completely different. But then what happens when you get confused about what's really you and what's not? It's an interesting topic, I find, for discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth, we're going to throw this one at you. You've been in a few shorts, some movies, TV shows. What is the main difference between working in those mediums and the digital medium?
We were so spoiled on the set of LARPs, because at the end of a long day of shooting, yes, it was a long day, but like we would all like sit together on when we were filming the outdoor shots. We went an hour and a half north of Montreal to film, and we stayed at our producer's family's country house up there basically for 3 days. So at the end of a long day, we would all sit on the couch together and have some beers and watch the shots from the day. We would just watch the dailies, and that was a pretty regular occurrence that Julian would let us see what had been filmed that day. I have never ever had that opportunity on any other set, and now my brain, I'm like programmed to want to see it. But so I would say that's the biggest thing, is like I'm filming, I'm doing even a short film, but like, or a TV show or whatever, and then I do it, you know, do it a couple of times, and just I have no idea what it looks like, and I will never know. I will not know what it looks like for like 5 months till it comes out, because it's just not my place as an actor. But Julian let us see it, and that was great. So
I often find that I always find it very interesting that they send these actors out on the talk show circuits, and I'm like, well, I did that a year, sometimes 2, sometimes even longer ago. If you're Patricia Arquette, God knows how she's going to recall the last 10 years of her life. But that has to be hard to try to recall that. I barely could tell you what I ate for lunch yesterday. Moving on. I want you guys to talk to me, and Julian touched a little bit on this earlier. Talk to me a little bit about the portrayal of role players, be it LARPers or Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, in movies, and the medium that is already out there, and how you feel it represents or misrepresents the average role player.
I think that right now, I mean, as we all know, kind of geek culture is making this huge. It's rising up. It has become cool, and it is thanks to groups like Geek Sundry and Felicia Day and other groups like them who are helping to give a voice to that community. And I don't think that community is at a place yet where people outside the community can properly represent it. There are TV shows, very famous TV shows, that sometimes unknowingly lampoon geek culture and nerds, and so I think that we're talking about role playing, but it encompasses it's all of geek culture in general, all forms of gaming, and hobbies, comic books, all that kind of stuff. They all suffer from the same problem when you're looking at it from the outside in. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame, but I really hope that eventually that's going to break, and you know, maybe movies, maybe comic book movies and this huge fad of that kind of stuff is going to help out with that perception, and you know, I would be really proud if we are in some way part of that movement.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, you're getting more, if you will, geeks in higher places in the development of these things. I mean,
Yeah.
you got J.J. Abrams running Star Wars. Like, thank God. You know, I mean,
yeah.
so,
when you get to that point, if you're within you understand the culture, then you can laugh with your culture and you can poke fun at it. But when it's coming from the inside, then it doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? It's coming from a nice place. And what happens is that when some people, you know, look at a subculture too long, then that culture becomes defensive. And so I think that a lot of geek culture has gotten to that point. So we're looking to hoping to break out of that.
Well, I also just want to sort of very quickly add that it's also, I mean, from a storytelling perspective, it's a very easy joke to be able to say, hey, look how socially maladjusted that person is. They can't even interact with real life. They need a fantasy world in which to escape. It's a very easy joke, and because it's a very easy joke, it's often used. And I feel like I feel like LARPs, the series, does a really good job of depicting people who have, you know, who are human beings, they have lives, and they also play characters in a game, in a fantasy world that they have created or that their game master has created for them, that they're building this story together. Because at the heart of it, that's what we're doing, right? We're all telling stories together, and that's just something fun that this group of people does, or LARPers do, or gamers do generally.
Perhaps this is something that comes easier to those of you with the acting theater background. But if you're playing these games, or any time, I guess, you're playing a character, how difficult is it to stay in character as opposed to breaking? I know with LARPing, it might be a little bit more so because it's very immersive. But what do you guys think?
Speaking from my experience, having played in one long-running game GM'd by John Verrill, which was a Changeling game, it was interesting in the sense that everyone was quite committed to playing in character, except that this, you know, once every 2 weeks kind of game was also a social opportunity to see other people. And so if you spend, you know, the 100% of your evening in character interacting with someone else in that relationship, then I don't get to ask my friend how their week was, you know? So there was kind of a back and forth of, yeah, let's play a scene, you and me, we'll talk about what our characters are interested in. Oh, and then we'll drop out really quickly because I'm actually quite curious how your vacation was last week, you know? And that kind of back and forth. It's actually a bit odd in a sense, you know, it's like, oh, are you in character right now? I can't tell because you're still wearing the costume. Because, well, anyway, that's my experience, and obviously there are LARPs that go much more towards the extreme of complete immersion required, and that can be really fun as well. Yeah.
I think it's one of the things that may intimidate people is that they are afraid of the perception is if they're not in character, they're going to get ostracized, they're going to get booted out. I would see it in a very similar way. Like, I'm here to play the game, but if I'm going to take an aside to say, hey, you know, how's the kids, I want to be able to do that, you know. So with that being said, it's one of those things that's kind of prevented me from trying it, though my barriers are slowly being broken down because I'm really enjoying a lot of shows like LARPs and that is depicting these things and just saying, well, you know, maybe it's not as crazy as all the things that have filled up in people's heads throughout the years.
I think the most important part is just to make sure that you find a group of people to game with that are of the same, you know, feeling and mentality as you. And look, we played like was it Liz that said? I think, yeah, Liz said that we play Dungeons and Dragons now, you know, once every week or two, and it's basically the LARPs cast and crew that get together and game together, and we know each other all so well that we are between lines jumping in and out of character and laughing at whatever situation, but we're cool with that. That's how we all want to play. If there was if there was a few people that wanted a fully immersive experience, I'm sure it would really annoy them. But that's because, so you just got to make sure that you're finding the group of people that are playing the same game that you want to play. It's just like any other thing, right? So.
Perfect. Awesome. If there is one message that you want to leave with people who are watching your show, what would that message be?
I would say, I mean, for me, I'm hoping we all get our own messages. Going off of what Julian said, and in terms of finding people who are playing the same game as you, like, find a group of people who you can have fun with doing something that you find fun, and don't be ashamed of it. Like, if you have a geeky hobby, we're in the age of the geek, in my opinion, so it's time to embrace it, and just have fun, just enjoy yourself. Yeah,
I would say, oh, sorry, Scott, do you want to go?
Nope, go ahead.
It's similar to Liz's, and I think it applied to myself, is just to have an open mind, and like she said, just try it, because I had never LARPed before, and before we started our Dungeons and Dragons group, I had never done that before, and even in the first session, I didn't talk a lot, because I was like, I don't know what's going on, and this is kind of strange, we have to just role play, and then you just get into it, and I just find that, like Liz said, when you find the right people and have an open mind, and there's no judgments, it's just a fun pastime and exercise that people do together.
Geeky or not, just if you love doing something, do it. Life's too short to care what other people think.
Exactly.
All right, so do you guys, and this is usually a softball, but do you guys believe that the digital medium is a fad, or if it's the future of entertainment?
Future.
Future.
Honestly, not to be all inflammatory or anything, but not inflammatory. I'm trying to find the word, but future's already here. It's not a future; it's a present. Like the digital media is. No, honestly, if I speak to people and they're like, "Oh, I watched something on TV," they don't mean TV. They mean Netflix, the digital medium. I mean, and I realize a lot of those shows that are currently being broadcast on that platform were originally intended for television. But the idea that you can create a television series that is broadcast entirely online and dumped all at once rather than the once-a-week block scheduling that we used to have to kind of work with and go through, I think it's here. I think the future is here. Also, I'm still waiting for my hoverboard Back to the Future to whichever one you are.
You've got about 10 months.
10 months, right. I'm still waiting. It's okay. No problem. You got some time.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, shows like Game of Cards is breaking all the rules. Like, this is a 100% digital show, obviously with some big names involved that just do dump all of their episodes at once. People love this. It does very well at award shows, and I agree with you. It is the present. I hope it stays the future. I think that's more what my fear is, because I like this medium. I like being able to binge watch like this. I can plan my watching around my schedule as opposed to the other way around. Mm-hmm. And that, anyway, I hope it stays personally.
You know what? I think it's probably going to be the thing that solidifies it, which is, I guess, unfortunate maybe. But as soon as advertising figures out how to properly harness online content, then it's going to stay around. Because as great as it is to be able to produce stuff for YouTube and all that kind of stuff, it's like the money got to come from somewhere, and that's got to come from advertisers usually.
Right. I mean, this is very common. Unfortunately, I mean, shows like The Guild, it did stop because she didn't like the show, and she wants to move it into the next medium, and people got to get paid, and I understand that. So, Julian, sticking with you, my friend, you've done work both in front of the camera and behind. Do you have a preference, and what are the main differences between the two?
You know what? Okay, so I've been acting since I was 17. I am 53 right now. Not. So I've been acting for a while, about 10 years. I've been editing for about 10 years, and my degree is actually in photography. So my place behind the camera it was my first time directing, but I felt very, very natural, and that's because my acting background helped me talk to the actors and figure out how best to direct them. The photography background helped me associate with the director of photography, and then because I have an editing background and I edited the series as well, I know how to shoot for the final product. And so because of that, I felt really, really comfortable, and I guess like sadistically like having complete control of the project, right? It's actually less nerve-wracking being the creative controller than it is being an actor for me. And in fact, the most nerve-wracking part for me of the entire shoot was when the episode that you'll eventually see, where I am one of the actors, because all of a sudden I was taken out of that comfort zone that I had established. So, I mean, I love both. I love primarily voice acting. I love cartoons, video games. I've always wanted to be on Mortal Kombat. But, they stopped doing live action for that, so, I lost that. I missed that boat.
That's all right.
But, yeah, I think that's what I feel comfortable in, is that stuff.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to cross the board. We'll start with Charlotte, then Scott, then Elizabeth, and end with Julian. What sort of digital content do you guys watch?
Well, I'm a Netflix lady. I watch a lot of Netflix, shamefully. I haven't seen as many web series as I'd like to. I think that's something that I'm diving into now, is watching the stuff that is linked to ours. So digital, I don't have a ton, actually. Netflix is probably the biggest thing that I got sucked into.
For me, online sketch comedy. When Picnic Face was a thing, I was a big fan of Picnic Face way back when. Way back when, 5 years ago or something. That was ages ago. But my point is, Picnic Face was a comedy troupe from Halifax that did online content as well as sketch improv, including Ebony Rosen, one of the stars of Space Janitors. Little shout out there. Yeah, you're great. All right. No, but in addition to that, web series via Geek and Sundry, a couple of series that we happened to have the privilege of watching an episode of at various web fests, like La Brigadière from Montreal or from Quebec, which is a wonderful Canadian comedy series. What else was I going to say? Oh, I also watch a lot of Let's Plays and kind of weird role play through of various games, which is just a huge pastime for me. I'm a big fan of watching people playing a game, but then also narrating their own experience of it as it's happening. A lot of fun, especially if they're a little silly.
My last episode was like Let's Players, so
oh yeah?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, for me, Video Game High School. Scott and I are working our way through it now. We just started season 2. I am a huge fan of the Pemberley Digital shows. So Lizzie Bennet Diaries, Emma approved. Now I'm watching the March Family Letters, which is also a show from Canada that got picked up for distribution by Pemberley Digital. So it's a good time to be a Canadian web series creator, let me tell you. So that, and I'm trying to work my way through the official selections at the Vancouver Web Fest. I just checked out Bleak, the series, and it's hysterical.
That's a great show.
Yeah, yeah. So I really enjoyed that one. Only 4 episodes, too, so it was like really... yeah, really good.
You know what, right now on Netflix, I'm checking out Skins, the old British series, which is basically Degrassi but with drugs.
Yeah.
Great work, Britain.
I'm also working through the Buffy series with my girlfriend.
Yeah!
I've already seen it, but it's just thanks to Netflix, I'm gonna watch it again. But then, as for web series, some of my favorites were, I saw one when we went to Miami called Firsts, which was hilarious. That was really, really great. Really cool concept. Timekeeper, shout out to Darren. What a great show. and also actually a selection for Vancouver Web Fest. So very exciting. And yeah, I love everything on the Geek and Sundry channel. I mean, I didn't actually think I'd enjoy watching people play board games, but turns out I love it. So there you go.
Yeah, it's added to my board game collection myself. I understand. We can go the opposite direction this time, starting with Julian. Who are your main influences in what you've chosen to do?
I will tell you, my number one influence is Mr. Joss Whedon. That guy is brilliant. I think what he did with the Firefly and Serenity series was fantastic and unjust. It was unfair that show ended. Joss Whedon is my number one director influence. So is Wes Anderson. I love Wes Anderson, and visually, my idol is Gregory Crutzen, who's a photographer who deals with large format photos. And if you don't know his stuff, please check it out because it'll blow your mind. That's it.
Liz, I think you're...
Okay, well, I'm going to go with Felicia Day. Woo! Because she was like right when web series were starting to appear, she was there with the Guild. So that paved the way for all of these geek-centered shows, and now it's like really exploding in popularity. And she made a channel. She made Geek and Sundry, and it's huge. They have 1 million subscribers on YouTube. So, like, and she's actress, producer, writer, whatever, and she's writing a book. So yeah, like way up there is her, and of course the Pemberley Digital people like Bernie Sue and the stuff that they've done in terms of web series and transmedia and using a bunch of different social media platforms to tell a story. It's really inspiring, the type of stuff that they've done.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't know, I see a lot of actors on television and film that I love, and I say like, oh, you're doing such a good job. But for me, if I want to talk about influences, I feel like on a day-to-day level, the people that influence me are sort of my own personal heroes, are other young people in my own community that are, standing up and artistically sort of saying like, I want to make a difference. I want to do X and Y. So, for example, there's a group from Montreal called Motel Raphael, who are a wonderful trio of ladies, and their backup band, Brotel Raphael, also very cool. And they just, they decided that we're musicians, and yes, we're young, but that doesn't mean we're not worth something. So they're out there, they toured the country, released their first album, did really well, and I'm happy for them, and it kind of inspires me to see people saying, well, I may not have 20 years of experience, but I'm going to do what I love. Here we go. That's what I do. Yeah.
For me, I've always loved Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I just think she's a star, and I'd love to be her. And yes, it's my dream to be in a Wes Anderson film one day. But I do think my answer would be similar to Scott's as well. As I think a lot of the influences I have around me right now are the other people in our community here in Montreal who are just striving to make their own work and who are just pushing and working hard, and it's just inspirational to see the work that they're putting out. And JT just, he just got a small reoccurring role in Saving Hope, and a girl, Annie Murphy, just got a show. She's on Schitt's Creek, and it's just so great to see this talent from Montreal spreading and finding work and then making their own, so we can show what we have here. And so I think that's why also it's so exciting for us to be a part of LARPs, because we worked really hard and we're really proud of it, and to see it making waves and able to do season 2 is just really exciting. So I just pull on the strength of the other people in the cast and in the community. It's great.
I don't know if you can get more Canadian than those answers. Love it.
Right?
We are. Okay, I guess to just wrap this up, when should we expect LARPs the series to start airing, and what is the air schedule moving forward?
Well, the trailer released just this past Friday, so we are looking at episode 0 coming out. What day is it today? On the 16th.
Yeah, it's the 14th.
This Friday, the 16th, episode 0 is going to come out on Geek and Sundry. So please subscribe to them on YouTube, youtube.com/geekandsundry. So that is the place where you will be able to watch season 1. So that's every Friday. We're also going to be releasing bonus content. We've been putting in some interviews, some gag reels, some behind-the-scenes footage, so that's going to get released as well. So even the people who saw the show the first time around, there's still new stuff to check out.
All right, guys. Well, there we have it. For someone who has seen the show, you guys are going to really enjoy this. I'm looking forward to viewing it again. I'd like to thank my guests, Charlotte, Scott, Elizabeth, and Julian. This has been our show, Webisode Watch on LARPs the series. So until next time, guys, keep on streaming.
Bye.
Thank you.